All right. Now, nearly 150 million people visit zoos each year in this country. But Tuesday's deadly tiger attack at the San Francisco Zoo has fueled an already passionate debate about animals in captivity. Are we managing them in the best way possible, or should wild animals be left in the wild? Let's take a closer look, and please note that some of the video you're about to see may be a little graphic. 2 days after the gruesome Christmas night attack at the San Francisco Zoo, the tiger compound has become a crime scene.
Last night we had an unfortunate situation occurred where we had one fatality and 2 serious injuries.
The search for clues to how and why the Siberian tiger viciously mauled 3 young men is fueling a fearsome debate whether wild animals should be held captive at all. Is it safe for the people who care for them and visit them?
These animals are bored, they're smart, they're agile, they're emotional, and they're working 24/7 to get out of their prison.
Consider the history of elephants in captivity. Circus in Honolulu, an elephant named Tyke suddenly attacked her trainer and handler before a horrified audience. Tyke had been taken as a baby from her mother in the wild. Many theorize Tyke snapped in some kind of post-traumatic stress.
These animals are like a loaded gun, sort of a hair trigger, that are about to go off when something trips them.
At the Elephant Sanctuary in Hohenwald, Tennessee, is the nation's largest natural refuge for former circus and zoo elephants, many who've been abused. Many of these animals bear physical and psychological scars from their time in captivity and have killed humans before and remain potentially dangerous.
Elephants shouldn't be in captivity. It's bottom line. We separate them from family. We limit their space, their physical activity.
New research shows elephants are highly intelligent and bond with family members. Like humans, they can show deep compassion and do not thrive in confinement. What do you see happening to elephants that are in captivity?
Elephants are just, some of them are just truly bored out of their mind.
And though we can't know for sure why Tyke or Tatiana attacked, there are many who aren't at all surprised.
Even the experts don't really know all there is to know, and that's what makes me concerned about keeping animals like this in a zoo.
For more on the issue of wild animals and their habitats, we turn to Jack Hanna, Director Emeritus of the Columbus Zoo, who joins us from Big Fork, Montana. We're also joined from Washington by Adam Roberts, Senior Vice President of Born Free USA. Gentlemen, good morning. Adam, I'd like to start with you, if I might. People have argued it's good for us humans to see these animals in the zoo, but do you think it's good for the animals?
Well, no, it's not good for the animals, but I disagree with the first part. It's not good for humans either. I mean, first, the animals are put in unnatural settings. They're taken out of their biological comfort zone and the way that they actually live in the wild and forced into these artificial enclosures on concrete behind bars. It's not good for them. But also, we know it's not good for humans either. We're not getting an educational benefit from zoo going or from circus going. And more importantly, as you've unfortunately seen recently, there is the potential for attack.
Jack, we do know that, for example, elephants in captivity only live half as long as elephants in the wild. 75% of elephants in captivity die of a disease that elephants in the wild never, ever get. Is this evidence that, in fact, elephants shouldn't be in zoos or circuses?
No, first off, let's talk. I didn't know we were going to talk about circuses, number one. Let's talk about the zoological parks, okay? I'm not in the circus business, number one. Number two, I think Adam is entirely wrong. There are millions of dollars spent on education in zoos, number one. Number two, as far as the elephants in zoological parks, we are making those improvements right now over the past 10 years of zoos that can handle these elephants in several hundreds of acres enclosures, even 10 and 15 acre enclosures. A lot of people come to zoological parks, 145 million people last year, several billion over the last probably 10 to 20 years in this country and throughout the world. And by the way, when I saw those parents, my heart goes out to them. And Adam's entirely wrong about what's happening. My life started, by the way, in the 60s because of Born Free, the movie. I dedicate my life to conservation because of that beautiful story, as well as to the zoo world. As far as what happened yesterday, in your intro to this, obviously that was done way before we found out this morning. If you've seen the news lately of what happened, now they've found footprint on the bar, blood over the moat, and maybe the feet dangling in the moat. Now, if you go across a barrier at a NASCAR race and go onto the track, you get hurt.
Well, Jack,
I take great offense to I take great offense to anyone stating about a zoological park, no education's done there. How are the mountain gorillas? How do the mountain gorillas, for example, live? We have given hundreds of millions of dollars to conservation, both to Ian Douglas Hamilton, Cynthia Moss, and he knows all these people, Joyce Poole. The mountain gorilla would not even hardly be here today if it wasn't for zoological parks and the tens of millions of dollars we've given to that conservation program.
Right, Jack, let me just jump in for a quick moment. We actually did report this morning that there was a footprint found and that there was a blood trail. So all of that is information that we, in fact,
I'm talking about what you said. I'm talking about what you said.
Let me finish, please.
I'm talking about what you said prior to me, though.
Right. We've been talking
Elizabeth,
about...
I know what was said. I hear it in my ear.
Okay, Jack, that's fine. You make an argument that you think that the animals are, and many of these zoos are making a great education for human beings. Adam is arguing the opposite. Adam, when you talk about the zoos and what they're doing to improve these enclosures, as Jack pointed out, several zoos in the country are trying to make these enclosures more realistic, more like their wildlife. Is it enough? Is it enough for these animals to live humanely?
Absolutely not. It's not enough to say that we're pouring money into education or putting money into conservation without quantifying exactly what that means. It's very easy to say we're doing it, but we have to see the results. And the AZA's own research has suggested that we don't know whether the results on educational values of zoos are conclusive or not, that there's just as much, if not more, value from going on the internet, doing research on wildlife, watching movies like Born Free or reading books about wildlife to learn about these animals and the way that they're supposed to live. I would argue, and Born Free believes, that you're actually getting the wrong message when it comes to education and conservation when you see, for example, Maggie, an African elephant that was in the Anchorage Zoo in Alaska, by herself, whereas wild elephants, females, live in matriarchal herds with grandmothers and daughters and granddaughters. You're not getting the right education about what animals are like in the wild, and that's why we believe that you should keep wildlife in the wild. That's best for the animals and it's best for the people.
Maggie
it's a very
has now
simple
been moved,
mentality.
And Maggie has now been moved to a sanctuary. Jack,
and it
go
took
ahead.
so many years.
Let Jack
Can I say
in.
something, Adam? What's the population of African elephants in the wild versus 20 years ago? What's the population of the African lion? 90% of hippos are gone. African elephants are down from 1.6 million to less than 400,000. Why is that? Because of the zoos, Adam, or what that?
No, it's not because
Why
of
is
zoos,
that, Adam?
and what's so interesting about this debate is that it's very easy to say that there is a conservation value to zoos, but the proof is in the pudding. Look at tigers. In 1900, there were 100,000 wild tigers on the planet. Today, there are roughly 3,000. So if zoos were doing such a good job, or circuses, or exotic pet owners, about educating the public and putting money into in situ wildlife conservation to protect these animals where they belong, then we wouldn't have the dire situation that we have now. And to take all of
Adam,
this responsibility for...
Can I say something? Elizabeth, can I talk a minute? Can
yes,
I say something?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Jack.
I'd be happy.
Adam, give Jack a chance.
Since Adam's had 2/3 of the show, can I say something?
Please go ahead.
Number one, Adam, thank you. Number one, Adam, tens of millions of dollars is spent toward a tiger by not just zoological parks, but other people raising tens of millions of dollars to preserve the tiger in the wild. How are zoos hurting tigers in the wild? It's overpopulation, Adam, and you and I both know that. It's not zoos or circuses. It's overpopulation is a problem.
Adam, let him finish.
Can I finish, Adam? All right.
Of course.
Adam knows exactly where these monies go, Diane. Hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent by zoological parks toward the wild. The Columbus Zoo just built a $14 million habitat for Siberian tigers, and several millions of dollars have been spent towards the Siberian tiger and Bengal tigers in the wild. So there is no argument over how many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars are spent towards these animals by zoological parks, AZA zoos in the wild. It's just a useless argument.
But Jack, what about the fact that while the Columbus Zoo has spent a lot of money trying to make this a humane environment, there are zoos in the country that have not. There are enclosures that animals find themselves in that are not nearly as nice and as large and as humane as the ones you're describing at your own zoo.
Right, and we're trying to close those zoos down, Elizabeth. We're trying every day to do it. The American Zoo and Aquarium Association has 220 accredited zoos in this country and aquariums. We're doing the best we can to provide habitats for these animals. Most of these animals live better than most people throughout the world, most human beings. We have to put human beings and these animals side by side and see what we can do. And we think by the billions of people going to zoological parks, and they're going to be there long after Adam's gone, long after I'm gone, zoos will be here.
All right.
Because the educational value, you have to have the love for animals in order to save animals, and that's what we teach.
All right, Jack. Hannah, Adam Roberts, and obviously a very passionate debate that's raging not just here this morning, but across the country. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. Tell us what you think. Go to abcnews.com and vote on whether you think that wild animals belong in captivity. It's now time for the weather, and Sam...